Hey guys, Scare9 here, welcome back to my channel today, and it is time to rank all 42 exotics within the Forsaken expansion, and up to this point in Destiny. There's a lot, so I just want to, kind of give a little disclaimer here at the beginning. There are 42 exotics. I definitely don't want this video going over like an hour. I'm aiming for the 35-40 minute mark, so I'm going to be very fast with some of these exotics. So if I don't hit on every point for every exotic, so if I, let's take an exotic and I don't talk about it in PvE, in Crucible, in Gambit, in Raids, in Nightfalls, etc., that's because of this time restraint, right? Like, I don't want this to be a 2-hour video. I would just live stream it if that's what I was hoping for. So if I don't mention every single point to every single exotic, that's also why. Like, I'm trying to be concise. If you have a problem with something like that, or you want to expand on something I am saying, let's talk about it down in the discussion section, or in the comment section rather, down below. We can take all the time we want to down there, whereas, in the video, I want to try to keep this nice and neat and concise. So when I'm ranking all of these exotics 1 to 42, it is across the entirety of Destiny 2. Their utility in every arena. It's not sloped towards Crucible. It's not sloped towards Raids. I do everything. I got to 5,500 last season. I'm making my way there now. I've done 200 Raids in Destiny 2. I play every aspect of this game, and that is going to affect how I view every exotic. So it's very even across the entire board. Now, I also can't predict the future, so I will not be ranking things from Black Armory, Penumbra, or Joker's Wild on this list, or anything further in Destiny 2. This is all 42 exotics. I'm recording this on November 17th, 2018. So any exotics that came out past that point are obviously not going to be on this list. I am including everything in the game right now, but I am interested in hearing your opinions. So after you hear my list, write yours down in the comment section below. Let me know what you agree with, what you disagree with, and why. I really want to have a conversation with you guys. And then just the final thing, I know a lot of people just care about like higher end exotics, so I'm going to leave a timestamp for all 5 of the different tiers down in the comment section down below. It'll be my pinned comment. I'll also leave it in the description if you guys would rather look there. Essentially, I have 5 tiers, 5 being like the worst of the worst. And then, the first tier obviously being like the best of the best. So if you really just want to, hear about like the medium tier exotics and on, you can just skip to that time frame or whatever. So without further ado, it's already been 2.5 minutes. I've wasted way too much time. Let's just go ahead and jump into it. So at the number 42 spot, the last exotic on our list is going to be the Jade Rabbit. Now, this has constantly been one of the worst exotics in the game, in my opinion. But, that's the weird thing about it. It's the worst exotic, but it's not necessarily bad. It's just not exotic. If this was a legendary weapon, it would function very, very fine. It would be a gun. But the thing is when you have weapons like Luna's Howl or Raedrix's Claymore, where their specific perks on a legendary weapon are more compelling than an exotic perk on the Jade Rabbit, there's something wrong with that. The Jade Rabbit, is a slow-firing scout rifle. It's not in a great place right now in terms of the meta anyways, and its useless exotic perk doesn't help it. So it is going to be the bottom of this list. Moving on, in the number 41 slot, we have another scout rifle, which is going to be the Mida Multi-Tool. Pretty much the same thing applies. It doesn't have a crazy exotic perk. In this meta, it's not super competitive. The catalyst sucks. That's one thing I forgot to mention. This is ranking all of the exotics with their catalyst as well. I have every catalyst in the game, so that is going to affect their rankings as well. If exotics don't have catalysts, that's just kind of tough luck for right now. But for right now, it is every exotic in its current state with the catalyst if it has one equipped. So just letting you know that. But the Midas catalyst is super useless. It doesn't really do much for it. And so it is going to be in the number 41 slot on this list. Next, we have yet another scout rifle, which is going to be the Skyburner's Oath. It's not a coincidence that the bottom 3 are scout rifles, 2 of which are the slowest archetype. That doesn't necessarily play into my play style. I'm a very aggressive player. I like to, kill things really quickly using things like the Midnight Cougar, the Raedrix's Claymore, the Luna's Howl, etc., etc. I like these top tier perks that help me kill things and people as quickly as possible. So these slow firing scout rifles that don't really play into the meta too well, they're definitely not going to fit into my playstyle too well, and thus they're going to be at the bottom of the list. And the Skyburner's, once again, just a slow rate of fire scout rifle, and its exotic perks are nothing special. Now we have reached the last exotic in the 5th tier, which is going to be the last exotic I think in the game is pretty much worthless. Everything from here on out is pretty good, And so in the number 39 slot, we have the Prometheus Lens. Now, I feel like this weapon, with every update, keeps getting pushed further and further into the background. It's never really buffed. It just keeps staying consistently bad. And so when you're releasing some of these crazy exotics, which we'll get into, like the Thunderlord or Sleeper or Thousand Voices or something, it just makes these bad exotics seem even worse. So the Prometheus Lens, it's cool. It's more of a novelty item. You know, it's got a really cool sounding exotic perk. I really like fire. I really like making things disintegrate and stuff like that. But in practice, it's not very powerful, and thus, it's just not very good. It really does need a buff. Now we have reached tier 4, so this is where everything starts to pick up quite a bit. Everything in this tier is quite good. There's not really any useless exotics from here on out. They just get better and better as we go up the tiers, I guess. So the first one in this tier, number 38, is going to be the Worldline Zero. This one is probably my overall biggest disappointment on this list, but it's still pretty good. The thing that I'm disappointed about is that swords, for the most part, aren't very usable in Destiny 2. The hit detection it's just horrendous. That really affects the Worldline Zero. You can see in the gameplay here, I clearly hit this guy and I die, which really sucks. That's happened to me all the time. The exotic perk is really cool, but I think in general, especially in PvE, swords just need to be more viable. They need some type of buff to help them be better, and then that will obviously greatly impact how good the Worldline Zero is. Moving on, we have the Sweet Business. This has always been one of my favorite looking weapons in Destiny 2, but as I have always said, I believe I've said this in all 3 of my previous ranking videos, it looks super powerful, but it doesn't feel super powerful, and it really needs to in order to be a good exotic. You know, when you're using this thing, you feel like a badass, you feel like you're spraying out and destroying all these enemies, but you're just not, you know? You're like shooting marshmallows at them, and even if you're shooting a million marshmallows, it's not really going to do that much damage, which is unfortunate. It's an awesome exotic. It has some really cool ornaments. It has an amazing exotic perk, but the catalyst is disappointing, and I'm really just hoping that this thing gets looked at and gets some type of buff in the future because I really, really want it to be good. Next, we have the Suros Regime. This has always been a fan favorite of the Destiny franchise and, you know, the community of Destiny. It's easy to use. It has the added benefit of getting your health back and all that sort of stuff. It's definitely not a bad weapon, but I feel like with a lot of the previous exotics on this list, it's not super special, right? The time to kill is quite poor in terms of, like, you know, we have got a meta centered around this like 0.6 to 0.8 second time to kill right now. The Suros really isn't on the good side of that. It's closer to like 0.9 to 1.1, which is really unfortunate. I'm not really sure what the optimal time to kill on it is, but it's definitely not as fast as the inaugural dress or the Luna's Howl or anything like that. I feel like a lot of autos are kind of being left behind. Hopefully that will be addressed in the next sandbox update because I love this weapon. It's got an amazing exotic perk. It just needs to feel better in terms of its viability within the sandbox, which would be a really, really welcomed update for me personally. Next, in the number 35 slot, we have the Two-Tailed Fox. Now, I honestly just don't understand what I'm doing wrong with this rocket. In the gameplay that I'm always watching, it looks really awesome. In their trailers, it looks awesome. In theory, it should be really awesome, but I can just never get these crazy kills that people are getting. Like, the rockets seem to shoot really slowly. I always miss my targets. The blast radius isn't nearly as large as I feel like it should be. And then in PvE, it's not as good as cluster bomb rockets, so I'm not really sure why you would use it there. But I love it in concept. I know a lot of other people like it. That's why I ranked it up a little bit higher on the list. I love the idea of shooting 2 rockets that do different things. That's really cool. That's an amazing dichotomy. It's really good in terms of game mechanics and stuff like that. I just don't think it's as viable for me personally. And I'm just going to make that like a personal flaw. That's definitely a me thing. That's why I'm still ranking it this high on the list. But I just wish I knew what the hell I was doing wrong because I really do want to enjoy this weapon. Next, we have the Rat King, which by itself isn't very potent and usable, but can be quite menacing if you have like your entire fire team of 3 to 6 people using them. And that's kind of where my problem lies with this weapon. It's a lot of fun, it's very quirky, it's just, you know, like I said, it's just a lot of fun, but, you know, exotics that require you to have more than 1 slot taken in order to be usable, that's not exactly the greatest thing ever. So while the Rat King is a lot of fun for like things like raid challenges and just messing with people in Crucible and stuff, by itself, there are definitely way more viable options. So that's why I'm keeping it kind of this low on the lower quarter of the list. Even though it's a lot of fun and I love the, you know, the uniqueness of it, it could be more viable in a solo aspect to the game, in my opinion. So it's coming in at number 34. Next, we have the Sunshot, which I have always loved. You guys know that. Explosions, fire, perfection, right? It's amazing. Everything explodes, just like with the Icebreaker in Destiny 1. What else can you say about it? It's pretty good, especially with the Catalyst in PvP. It's definitely good in PvE. There's definitely more viable options in terms of hand cannons, but they don't make shit explode, right? So that's a pretty fair trade-off in my opinion. It's an amazing combination overall in terms of its exotic perks and its utility. It still could use some type of love from Bungie. That's why it's kind of lower on the list, but it's a lot of fun. I'm definitely glad it's in the game. And yeah, that's where it's gonna be. Next up, we have the Trinity Ghoul in the 32nd slot. Now, this is extremely similar to the Sunshot in terms of like what its main appeal is. It makes shit blow up once again, but instead of solar like the Sunshot, they all blow up in this amazing demonstration of arc energy. It's very, very cool. That being said, I don't see what sets it apart from like a regular legendary bow. It might have a little bit more utility in terms of like killing large groups of enemies and stuff like that. But in general, bows aren't in the best location, especially in like PvE. In PvP, they're pretty good, but in things like raids or just higher end strikes or stuff, there's not really a reason to seek out to use a bow, I guess is what I'm saying. And the Trinity Ghoul doesn't do a lot to change that. It's a novelty piece, it's awesome, it looks really cool. I just feel like it could be a tad more powerful, which is why it's in the number 32 slot. Now in the number 31 slot, we have our last weapon in tier 4, which is going to be the Polaris Lance Scout Rifle. Another weapon that makes things explode. You know, this is where they all kind of go. Now, I would say the Polaris Lance has one thing going for it, and is that it has amazing DPS perks, but that's kind of counteracted by the fact that it's on one of the worst DPS classes in the game, being the slowest archetype rate of fire for scout rifles. So you have really good DPS perks on a really bad DPS archetype. It balances out. I mean, it's excellent, right? It's very, very good. People like it. It makes things explode. But once again, you guys are probably sick of hearing it by now. I feel like you can be just a tad better. I know everything can't be overpowered, but I'd like everything to be at least competitive, right? So while I very much appreciate the Polaris Lance for what it is, I feel like it could just a tiny nudge, Bungie, just a tiny, tiny, tiny nudge. But still, I love the exotic, I love the ideas, I love the theme, and it is going to be going here on the list. So now we're jumping into tier 3, and this is where pretty much anything from here on out is viable, right? Like, if I jump into an activity that's not a raid with my friends and they're using any of these, I'm not going to be questioning it as much. Now, if you take some of these weapons into a raid, I might be saying, like, what the hell is wrong with you for some of them? But they're fun, they're viable, and at the end of the day, that's what makes exotics exotic, right? So that's what we're approaching in tier 3. So the first one, number 30 on the list, is going to be the Cerberus +1, a brand new exotic auto rifle that came with Forsaken. This is definitely one of the craziest exotics we've ever gotten in the Destiny franchise. It's pretty mundane in terms of it's just an auto rifle, right? But it shoots 4 streams of bullets at one time, and it's crazy. And that's sort of like a good thing and a bad thing. So the good thing is it's a lot of fun to use. You'll get a lot of laughs out of it, that sort of thing. But the bad thing is it's really hard to hit smaller enemies with this weapon because the bullets don't really follow the reticle. They go like around it. And you know, it's like a catch-22. If you're shooting like giant ogres and things like primevals and stuff, sure, have fun with it. However, if you're shooting smaller enemies, you know, you're not going to be hitting every bullet from every shot, meaning you are going to be losing DPS, meaning that you are negatively impacted overall in those scenarios where you're going to be doing more damage against larger enemies, which is definitely a positive in those scenarios. So it's definitely very situational. It's a lot of fun. It's very quirky. Yeah, it's going to be coming in here on the list. Number 29 is probably going to blow everyone's minds. This is one of the best kind of redemption stories of Destiny. We have another one coming up too. This is going to be the Prospector. Now, I believe on my very first list, I ranked this like the worst exotic in the game or the second worst exotic in the game. This thing has come a long way. They gave it extra damage, they gave it bonus reserves, they gave it extra functionality. It's pretty crazy. Now it does arc and solar damage. It burns over time for solar, and you do arc initially. And it's very cool. It's fairly situational, but in PvP, it can be extremely effective. As you can see, I'm melting this boss in the background. It's super good in terms of just being able to spam it. Grenade launchers, you know, they've come a long way. They were definitely kind of like the redheaded stepchild of Destiny. They're starting to integrate back into the main meta, which is a lot of fun. I'm definitely loving the Prospector. It's not as viable as something like cluster rockets, but it's a lot of fun. It does a hell ton of damage, and it's very, very cool. So that's why it's coming in at number 29 on this list. Next, we have number 28, which is a fan favorite from Destiny 1, which is going to be the Hardlight. Now, it's always been a staple of people's inventories, especially if you're doing something like Nightfall runs with the match game modifier on, where elements really, really matter. There's always been a time in Destiny 2 where your elements matter. Originally, you got the extra shield blowing up thing. You did 3 times more damage in vanilla with the matching elements. I believe that's correct. Now you do the same amount of damage across all shields, if I'm not mistaken, regardless of its element, but you still get that extra explosion, which is really cool. And then, like I said, in things like Nightfalls with the match game modifier on, things like the Hardlight are very, very important, especially if you're doing like high score runs and stuff like that. So it's pretty cool. It's not the most unique weapon in the world, but the functionality of being able to switch between any of the 3 main Destiny elements, very, very cool, very, very appreciated. And yeah, that's why it's coming in here on the list. Number 27, we have a brand new exotic shotgun returning from Destiny 1, but it's new in Destiny 2. It is going to be the Lord of Wolves. Now, initially, this weapon has a lot of appeal, especially it was like terrible in Destiny 1, right? And you bring it in Destiny 2, you rework it, it seems like it should be a lot better. Essentially, this thing just spam fires 5 shotgun rounds, and that's like 1 shot. And it's pretty crazy. It's got pretty good range. However, I think the downfall to it is whenever you're aiming at an enemy and you're trying to shoot, you can't really move side to side in terms of like aiming during that shot. So if you take the trigger, all 5 of those rounds have to disperse before you're able to kind of reevaluate the situation, which is unfortunate. It's still very powerful. It kills people very quickly. However, it's very easy to burn through ammo. And like I said, you have to hit like 3 or 4 of those shots to kill someone. So it's not as quick as something like a Dustrock Blues or just another traditional shotgun, meaning that while it's very dangerous and could potentially map someone, you have kind of this trade-off with it as well. So you just have to be very careful when using it. Next up, in the number 26 slot, we have the Coldheart. Now, the Coldheart is once again one of those things that was just a staple as soon as it launched into Destiny 2. People loved it. They used it in raids, all sorts of these things. It's been kind of bumpy for the Coldheart, though, especially with the new weapon system changes. I don't think it was helped very much by that, because why would you use a Coldheart in your elemental slot when you could be using a Nightcrawler shotgun, or if you could be using a sniper rifle that does even more damage, like the Borealis in this slot or something like that. So the Coldheart, it's very, very consistent. It's cool. It's always been a staple, but I feel like it's just gradually starting to be pushed to the back, similarly to the Prometheus Lens, right? So I think it could use kind of like a nice little touch up. I'm not really sure what they could do to it, but I feel like it's not as outstanding as it used to be. And something definitely needs to change in order to make sure that it just doesn't become the Prometheus Lens version 2.0, where just like no one uses it. It's a cool item that you have in your collections, but it needs to be more viable, I think. Now, in the number 25 slot, we have the Sturm. Now, you guys know I've always been a huge fan of this gun. Hand cannons have always felt really good, and this update has only made that better because now Crucible is dominated by hand cannons and shotguns. So a short-range hand cannon is going to absolutely kick ass in this meta. You don't even have to use it with the Drang. You have this Sturm and Drang combo where the Sturm becomes even more deadly. You don't have to sacrifice that anymore, especially if you have the range and handling catalyst on the Sturm. It is extremely viable by itself. That being said, the Drang is very good in this meta as well. It melts almost as quickly as shotguns in some scenarios. You might be throwing out some of those kind of like faster encounters or whatever, but it is very powerful. It's very good. And yeah, I recommend every one of you guys go try out the Sturm right now because it is a ton of fun, and that's why it's coming in at the number 25 spot. Now in the number 24 slot, we have something that absolutely crushed the last season, which is going to be the Vigilant Swing. It's always been extremely solid in the Crucible. I feel like it's still pretty solid, but it was definitely hurt a little bit by this meta. Like I said, I mentioned the last time, hand cannons and shotguns dominate this meta. So things that are a little bit further range, that shoot a little bit more slowly, like pulse rifles, aren't going to perform quite as well as they used to. So while the Vigilant Swing is still very good, it's got some pretty great perks, especially for competitive and things like that. The Catalyst is very nice. I feel like it's fallen just a little bit, but it's still a very viable option. That also applies to our next weapon on this list, number 23, the Graviton Lance. pretty much everything I just said about the Vigilant Swing applies to this one as well. It used to be really good. It's still fairly good. It doesn't compete nearly as much as it used to, but it's still just a lot of fun, right? And it's very effective. And I would argue that the Graviton's exotic perks are much better than the Vigilant Swings, which is why I put it up a little bit higher, but still not as good as it used to be, but still pretty good. So that's why it's ranked on this number on this list, number 23. Next, we are going on to number 22, which is Darcy. This, once again, was pretty much always like my lowest ranked exotic, or down in the bottom ones. It had a very impactful buff, I believe, starting with update 2.0, right before Warmind, where it just became this amazing DPSer in the raids. You could just absolutely destroy everything. But then, after Bungie fixed it, they introduced the Sleeper, the Whisper of the Worm, and the 1000 Voices. So you had this weapon that was like the pinnacle of raid DPS. And Bungie was like, nah, fuck it. Give them more stuff. And so, while the Darcy is still technically really good on paper, it cannot compete anymore. There's no reason to use it over any of those three weapons that I mentioned. And yeah, I think it would be more viable if it was maybe in an elemental slot instead of the power slot, but it kind of fell a little bit. It's in rank 22. Moving on. So now in rank 21, we have the other exotic sniper rifle from before Warmind, which is going to be Borealis. Now, traditionally, I haven't known where to rank this thing because I'm on Xbox. You know, this was a PlayStation exclusive until Forsaken. So I've just been kind of like throwing darts blindly at a dartboard and hoping that people, you know, responded well to my ranking. Now I can use it. I'm extremely happy with it. It's a lot of fun. I've loved doing this thing, getting the catalyst, etc. It's a lot of fun. It has the same kind of functionality of the Hardlight, which is something I very much appreciate, except you get the additional bonus of better DPS as well, which is very, very cool. You can keep that going pretty much infinitely with, you know, like the Titan Barrier that reloads, or the Lunafaction Boots, or the Hunter Dodge. It's just very, very useful in things like strikes and nightfalls and things like that. So I'm a big fan of the Borealis. It's going in at number 21. Let's move on. So no, at the number 20 slot, we have pretty much the only viable bow and arrow, in my opinion, this season, at least, or in the current sandbox. You know, there's a lot that are kind of fun to use, but if you're using or looking to use one competitively, I would say the Wish Ender might be for you. You can see through freaking walls, and it overpenetrates enemies, and it damages them twice. Very, very cool. It has the, you know, the benefits of being a bow, which is just extremely powerful. You need 2 arrows to kill someone, and then you can see through walls. Like, that's crazy. That is by far one of the most overpowered exotic perks we've ever had. They implemented it extremely well, where it's not broken, but it's still very, very powerful. And yeah, Wish Ender's coming in at number 20. Now, in the number 19 slot, we have one of my old favorites that's definitely fallen from grace quite a bit. That is going to be the Merciless. Now, it's had a weird journey. So it used to be the top, then it was like the bottom, and now it's kind of like in the middle. It's really weird how the Merciless has... It was just amazing. They introduced cluster bomb rockets and other things, and it just, like, no one used the Merciless. And now with the weapon slot changes, it's viable again, especially with the fusion rifle damage that we just got a couple of updates ago. It's very, very powerful in things like the Last Wish raid, which is so weird to think about that we've come full circle like that. While it's not as powerful as something like the 1000 Voices or other things like that, it's still very good, and especially for something that goes in your energy slot instead of your power slot. So the Merciless, it's not as good as it used to be, but it's not as bad as it used to be. It's just like, okay, it's pretty good, okay? And I'm excited to see what they do with this weapon in the future. Next up, we have the Fighting Lion in slot 18. I'm going to repeat that. The Fighting Lion is in the back third of the list. That's so weird. If you would have told me that a year ago, I would have been like, you're out of your goddamn mind. There's no way Scarrow 9 would rank the Fighting Lion this high on a list. And yeah, here we are, right? The Catalyst is one of the best in the game, giving it Chimera. I don't know whose idea that was. Freaking geniuses, that's who. While I still wouldn't recommend using this thing ever in competitive, and I think I will personally slap you if I ever see you using it in competitive. Not really. I mean, you do you, right? But it's not the best option. However, in casual Crucible and Iron Banner, it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun. You just go around, you're just having some giggles. And it's stupidly powerful for how fun it is too, right? Like one grenade that comes out of this thing, one hand cannon tap. And then in addition to that, because of Chimera, it's even easier to finish off people. It's a lot of fun. I love it. It's definitely come a long way since the game launched. I'm very happy with the transition of this weapon. And yeah, it's coming in at number 18. Now, in the number 17 slot, we have pretty much the only sword in Destiny that I think is viable in terms of like a more endgame sense. That is going to be the Black Talon. Maybe I worded that wrong. Not in an endgame sense. I would never take this thing into a raid. It's a lot of fun to use though. I would say in Crucible, it's one of my favorite heavies to use, and that's for a weird reason. So if you pick up a rocket in Crucible, you get 2 rockets. That's like 2 kills. If you pick up something like the Colony, 2 free kills, right? I feel like it's a very average number to get 2 kills. The Black Talon, you can very easily get 3 kills and stretch that out to 7 if you just use it like a normal sword. It's very diverse. You have the insane range of whatever the hell its projectile is with insane tracking, plus the ability to use it as a normal sword. It's very cool looking, it's very cool feeling, it is very powerful, and it is coming in at the number 17 slot. Now, in the number 16 slot, we have the Risk Runner. Man, this gun is always so fun to use, and unfortunately, I always forget that. Like, before going into a ranking video, I'll always have this thing close to the bottom. Then when I go back and get footage for it, I'm like, what the hell was I thinking? I always forget how fun this weapon is. Unfortunately, it's only viable like a third of the time because, you know, it's arc-based, so if you have an encounter that's mostly void or mostly solar, it's not going to be as powerful, but the Risk Runner is a hell ton of fun if you just love spraying the absolute hell out of everything. That's why it's going in on the number 16 slot. Next up on this list, we have the Malfeasance. Now, I have a really weird relationship with this weapon. On one hand, it's really cool. I love its exotic perks, and it feels like it should be very powerful. It's from Gambit, which has some of the most interesting story in the game, etc., etc. However, I feel like it really detracts from the overall experience if you use this weapon. It is primarily good in Gambit. However, if you use it in Gambit, you are no longer allowed to use the things that make it easy to kill the prime evil, meaning that you are forced to now use it in like Taken-based activities, which is fine for this DLC. There's a ton of them. I'm running the Corrupted Strike in the background, for instance. That is a great example. That is a great example of a situation where this weapon would be really useful. However, on the other hand, in future expansions, there's not going to be quite an emphasis on the Taken, meaning that this weapon will now be even less useful than it already is. So it's kind of like a catch-22. Either way, it's a pretty cool weapon, so I'm going to rank it up this high on the list. Now in the number 15 slot, we have another kind of weird situation. It is the new PlayStation exclusive. It is going to be the exotic trace rifle, the Wavesplitter. I want to say thank you to Arlo on my mod team. He was awesome enough to record footage, send it over to me. That's what you're seeing in the background. So if it's bad, blame him. No. In all seriousness, thank you to him, and then thank you to everyone on my Discord server for coming together and helping me decide how to rank this thing. We decided that it's going to go in the number 15 slot because it's probably the most powerful of the trace rifles. And yeah, so if you're interested in joining that Discord server, the link will be down in the description. But just a huge thank you to Arlo and all of them once again. The rankings would have been different without them, and I very much appreciate that. So the Wavesplitter, why is it at number 15? So I would say the only downfall to the Wavesplitter from footage I've seen and from hearing things from people who have used it, it's fairly inconsistent because it's got its 3 firing modes, right? And so if you're not on the second or third one, it's gonna be pretty garbage. However, as you can see, it looks very powerful whenever you do have it on that third one. And it just, I mean, it doesn't even look that bad when it's on the first one, honestly. I'm excited to get my hands on this weapon. I don't think I would ever use it in things like raids or anything. But even though it's really quirky, it still looks really powerful, and that's why it's coming in at number 15. That is the end of Tier 3. So now we're moving into Tier 2. Pretty much everything from here on out is going to be the best in some type of activity. So that's kind of how I structured it. Tier 2 is going to be really good in 1 or 2 activities, and then Tier 1 is going to be just good in everything. It's just the best of the best. So at number 14, we have the Huckleberry. Now with the Catalyst, this thing is insane. Every time you get a kill, it automatically fully reloads your magazine, and it's just like a perfected version of the Risk Runner. Do you remember how I was saying like the Risk Runner is like super awesome, but it's only viable like a third of the time? The Huckleberry is always viable, and it is so freaking cool. You're always able just to go on these absolutely just destructive onslaughts of death. Like you get it going, you're not stopping. You get rampage, you get unlimited ammo, This thing is disgusting. It looks really cool. And if you want to just feel freaking powerful, load into Escalation Protocol with the Huckleberry, and you will feel like a freaking god. It's very, very cool. It's coming in at number 14. Yeah. So now in the number 13 slot, we have probably everyone's favorite gun to hate. It's probably the most annoying gun in the game right now. That is going to be the Colony. I don't want to spend too much time on it. There's not much to say. Essentially, you get 2 to 3 free kills. It tracks for you. You just have to kind of like lob them in the general direction. It's cool, but it's extremely aggravating. But I can't just not put it up this high, right? Because it is very easy to use. It's very effective. And yeah, that's going to be the Colony. Now in the number 12 slot, we have arguably one of the best exotic shotguns for Crucible ever, and that is going to be the Chaperone. Now in Destiny 1, this thing was kind of a joke. In Destiny 2, it is amazing. You can one-shot, headshot people from like across the freaking map. If someone was standing at that window back there, that's probably a good 10 feet. Bam! One shot to the head. It's crazy, the range. And then you throw on like Lunafactions and a Rift, which is very situational. I will give you that. But it's just like you can hit people from 50 feet out. It's crazy. It's kind of stupidly overpowered. I'd say the only downfall is it doesn't like one-shot body shot unless you're like inside that person's belly button. But it can one-shot headshot from forever away. That's why it's going to be this high, because it is extremely, extremely viable. It's like a high-risk, high-reward type of thing. But yeah, it's going to go in at the number 12 slot. Now in the number 11, we have one of my personal favorites from across Destiny, whether it be the Red Death in Destiny 1 or the Crimson in Destiny 2. Now this thing is a lot of fun. It's a hand cannon. It is extremely viable in this meta. You get health back. You have unlimited ammo. What else could you ask for? It's a menace. It destroys. It's really cool. I love the hell out of this gun. And the Crimson is going in the number 11 slot. Now in the number 10 slot, this one really pains me. I've always had a very hate-hate relationship with this weapon. But it's hard to deny that it's come a long way. And that is going to be the Telesto. I went from hating the Telesto because it just wasn't that good, and for some reason everyone loved it, to hating the Telesto because now if you go into comp, it's like you'll have nightmares. It's all I hear. I close my eyes to go to bed at night, and Telesto, just stop. Just stop. So it's going in at the number 10 slot. It's super powerful in Crucible. It's super good, super annoying, nightmare fuel, but I just can't deny that it's really good now. It's a lot better than it used to be. And so it's going in the number 10 slot. So now next in this tier, we have number 9, which is going to be the Wardcliff Coil. There's not much has changed about this weapon, but everything that I've said in the past stands. It's super crazy. It's like the perfect embodiment of an exotic. It's powerful, it's unique, it's crazy as hell. It's just really cool and really fun. It's like everything an exotic should be put into one, whatever the hell you want to call it. It's the Wardcliff Coil, right? Very good in public events, very good for melting bosses if you're farming Nightfalls, very good in Crucible, annoyingly so. And if you have the freaking catalyst, not only does it go everywhere, it now tracks for you as well. So the Wardcliff Coil is broken. It's awesome. It's a ton of fun. It's going in at the number 9 slot. Now we have our last exotic in tier 2. It is going to be the number 8 slot, the Ace of Spades. Now in Destiny 1, once again, this thing was really lackluster. It made people's heads explode. Whatever. Had Firefly. Nothing else cool. Now you have probably the best version of Kill Clip in Destiny, Memento Mori. It's super good. It's really cool. You can just, in Crucible, go on killing onslaughts where you never have to worry about not being able to kill someone super fast. In PvE, it's amazing as well. It's very good pretty much everywhere. It can be kind of outclassed by things like the Lunas or the Trust or something like that. But all around, it's super solid. It's super easy to use. It's Cade's weapon. Rest in peace, Cade, my dude. But it's super good. I love it. And yeah, it's coming in at the number 8 slot. Now we have reached tier 1. Everything from here on out is pretty much the best of the best. I don't think any of these weapons ever leave my inventory. And there's a very good reason for that. So the number 7, this will probably be the most controversial pick because I feel like not a lot of people use it anymore, is going to be the Legend of Acreus. However, with the Catalyst, where you now get 6 shots in the chamber and faster reload, it is insane, whether it be in Crucible, whether it be in Strikes, whether it be in Gambit. I've never used it in Gambit, but I don't think it'd be too bad in Gambit. That'd be interesting. I'm going to go try that out. But the Acreus is really good. It's probably one of the most fun raid exotics I think we've ever gotten, save one that's later on this list. Spoilers. The Acreus is a lot of fun. It's very good. I highly recommend it. Yeah, it's coming in at the number 7 slot. Number 6, we have another redemption story. This was probably the worst exotic, or one of the worst exotics at the launch of Destiny 1. It was just kind of more of a party thing. The Tractor Cannon. Now that it buffs every element, now that it goes in your heavy slot and it can buff your Ikelos shotgun in your secondary slot, even though it's only for 33%, it still does that. It is one of the go-to strats in one-phasing Riven. It is one of the go-to strats for one-phasing anything in Escalation Protocol. It's just super, super necessary, especially if your team's kind of underleveled, like that first month where a raid comes out. The Tractor Cannon is a must. In Crucible, it's insanely powerful, where it shuts down supers and boops people off cliffs where they can't jump back. In Gambit, it's a lot of people use this to kill the bosses faster. It's super versatile. It's a lot of fun. And it's a weird story of a gun who it was kind of worthless. And now it's perfect. It's insane. So that's why I love the Tractor Cannon. It's coming in at the number 6 slot. Now in the number 5 slot, we have the Queenbreaker's Bow. Talk about annoying exotics. This thing is mind-blowing. You go in for invading in Gambit, bam, 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 everything's dead. Then you go back in, bam, 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 everything's dead. It is so good. It has the most aim assist. I think if you took every other exotic on this list and added together their aim assist, probably still less than the Queenbreaker's Bow. That is totally backed by science, by the way. It's very, very good. It's very, very crazy. If you guys have it and haven't used it, I don't know what the hell you're doing. It's not the greatest in PvE. It's still, it's pretty good. I don't think I would recommend using this thing against like Riven or anything. But it is just insane in pretty much everything else. Yeah, it's going to be the number 5 slot for this video. In the number 4 slot, we have the newest exotic in the Destiny universe, which is the Thunderlord. I think it's safe to say, like, no one expected this to be as good as it is. It is insane. It's amazing everywhere. In Crucible, we were using this thing in the raid the other day. It killed literally everything just as fast as cluster bomb rockets or the sleeper. It's mental, right? It's so much better than it was in Destiny 1. I hope this is kind of like the normal thing for machine guns. They just need to be this powerful. It's so cool. You get like 220 shots in PvE with this thing. It's so, so good. It's a lot of fun to use. It makes you feel like freaking Zeus himself. I have the shirt coming in the mail. It looks awesome. I love this thing, and it is coming in at the number 4 slot. Now, admittedly, I'm going to take the cop-out here. The remaining 3 weapons, I'm going to give them a 3-way tie for number 1. That is going to be the Whisper of the Worm Sniper Rifle, the Sleeper Simulant Exotic Linear Fusion Rifle, and then finally the 1000 Voices Exotic Fusion Rifle. They are all perfect. I don't think you could do anything to any of them to make them better, which is insane because 1000 Voices still has a catalyst somewhere to be released. So I can't really say which of these is better than the other ones because they're all really good for different scenarios. So you have the Whisper of the Worm. If you have your super long raid encounters where you know you're going to be running out of ammo and you need to be doing as much damage as you can overall, Whisper of the Worm. For things like Argos, this is what you need to be using. On the other hand, you have the 1000 Voices, which does probably the most damage in a short amount of time. So while the Whisper of the Worm obviously does more damage overall, if you had these things and you shot for 30 seconds, Whisper would do more. 1000 Voices does more damage more quickly. So its DPS is higher, but its overall damage is lower. So if you're doing things like Gambit, where you just want to melt the absolute hell out of these prime evils, or you're doing something like Shuro-Chi, where you have a little bit of time, you just want to melt them, 1000 Voices is absolutely perfect. And then it's really good in Crucible as well. And then you have like the perfect medium to that, the Sleeper Simulant. So if you're random solo queuing into, let's say, Gambit, and you're worried that you might use all your ammo, someone will invade, kill all you, and get all your Primeval's health back, the Sleeper's what you're going to want instead of the 1000 Voices. Because the 1000 Voices, you're going to do a lot of damage, but you're going to waste all your ammo. So when you die, you're not going to have anything left. Whereas the Sleeper Simulant, even if you die, you can hold like 14 shots in the Sleeper. I think 16 with Fusion Rifle boots. So you're probably not running out of ammo. And then it's really easy to use, especially with the Catalyst and things like the Kali encounter, things like the Shuro-Chi encounter. I would recommend maybe using it in Vault. I personally use the Legend of Acreus in the Vault, but I know a lot of people do use the Sleeper Simulant. So it's just really good. So at the end of the day, the Whisper of the Worm, the Thousand Voices, and the Sleeper Simulant are all just perfect. That's all there is to say. I don't think anyone can contest otherwise. I would be interested to see how you guys ranked these three. That's something that I don't think I'm able to do, but I'm very interested to see what you guys think. But yeah, that's going to be the entire list. So I hope you guys did enjoy. We just ranked all 42 exotics currently in Destiny, which is crazy to me. I hope you guys did enjoy the video. Let me know what you guys thought down in the comment section below. Like I said, I'm not here to argue, I'm here to discuss. So let's have a conversation down in the comment section below. I hope you guys did enjoy this video. If you did, make sure to leave a like rating and to share it with your friends. If you are interested in watching either of the two ranking videos on screen, you can click their respective annotations to be taken to them. If you are brand new to my channel, make sure to hit the giant version of my logo on screen to be subscribed to my awesome Destiny 2 videos and live streams. Thank you guys so much for watching today, and I will see you in my next video.